I want you guys to look at this picture. I don't know if you can see it, if there's a glare on it or anything, but this is a picture of my dad on a cattle drive out in just north of Jackson, Wyoming. I was actually at that drive. They didn't take my picture though because I was wearing a baseball hat, so I didn't look as cool. Whereas my dad, he looked freaking awesome, so they took his picture. But you know what? Pictures aren't always what they seem. Look at the other cowboy back here. That guy. You know what? Oh, by the way, yeah, he's behind the cow doing unspeakable acts. But this guy over here, not a cowboy. He was just along for the ride because he got to ride a horse, and he bought his outfit like the day before. If you look at his outfit, everything's like brand new. There's more to the story here. Like I said, I was on that drive, and probably later that afternoon, this was in the morning, this was taken, that afternoon, this guy, he fell off his horse into a mud puddle. I am not lying. Ask my brother-in-law. He was also on that cattle drive. He'll tell you the guy fell off his horse. He didn't know how to ride a horse. Okay, so moral of the story is things aren't always what they seem. Well, what's that got to do with what we're doing here? Yeah, we're going to do some scary factoring. Okay, it isn't as scary as it looks. Okay, it isn't as scary as it would seem. All right, things aren't always what they seem. We'll look at the first one. 3 times a quantity of x plus 7 plus the 5y times the quantity of x plus 7. Scary looking, right? Not if you break it down. How many terms are we seeing here? Now, a term is separated by a plus or a minus or sometimes an equal sign if it's there, unless they're in parentheses. So I'm looking at 2 terms here, right? Within those 2 terms, what do they have in common? They have an x plus 7 in common, right? Well, that x plus 7 is the greatest common factor. So that's going to come out, x plus 7. Okay? And let's see what's left over. In the first term, we pulled out an x plus 7, and that leaves you with a 3. In my second term, I pulled out an x plus 7, and that leaves me with a 5y, plus 5y, if you will. Okay? Put parentheses around that. Now, I should have written this actually in red, because the way it's written, it's incorrect. The way it's written, it looks like just a 7 is going to distribute, right? So I need parentheses around this x plus 7 to show that it was the x plus 7 that factored out. I can multiply it back through, the x plus 7 times the 3, right there, and the x plus 7 times the 5y, right there, and I would have gotten the right answer, okay? Don't do this. You get this a lot. They try to say x plus 7 squared times the quantity of 3 plus 5y because I have 2x plus 7s. Okay, that's incorrect. And what I tell people is, how do you know that's incorrect? Well, try distributing x plus 7 squared and see if you get this back. You won't. Okay? So, yeah, I'm going to erase that, or try to. My eraser doesn't work too well on this board for some reason. Whereas, like I said, if you distribute the x plus 7, not squared, back through, then you'll get this guy. All right, go ahead and hit pause for a second and see if you get the second one right. It's a lot like the first one. Go ahead. Okay, let's see how you did. The second one, let me switch colors here. So I've got 2 terms here, right? What do they have in common? The 2a plus the 3b. So when you simplify that down, pull out the 2a plus 3b in parentheses, right? Having learned our lesson here. What's that leave us with? A 6a. And I've had this discussion before. If everything comes out of here and nothing's left, then you're thinking about it wrong. If everything factors out, something's left. And that something would be a 1. In this case, a negative 1. So your factors here are going to be 2a plus 3b and 6a minus 1. All right, well, let's take a look now at what happens if, sorry, I was just looking at how long this video was getting to be. We're okay. What happens if you have 4 terms? Now, most of the time, when you factor and you have 4 terms you want to look at factor by grouping, okay? Let's group the first two terms together, and then we'll group the last two terms together. Okay, out of the first group, let's see what factors out. They both have a y in common, right? So let's factor a y out. And when you do that, you have x minus 5. The last two terms, they have a 3 in common, right? So we'll factor a positive 3 out. When you factor a 3, you get x minus 5 left over. Now what I like to tell people is what you have in parentheses here and here, they need to be the same. If they're not, then you've messed something up. And they are, they're the same. And notice now that where I'm at here, it's where my starting point was on these guys here. So really this problem is like these two guys but on steroids. Right? It's a little more juiced up on the front end. So let's see if we can figure it out. We've got two terms. In those two terms, our common factor, greatest common factor, is going to be the x minus 5. So I'll pull out that x minus 5. And then what's left over? The y plus 3. Okay, try this last one out, see if you can get it. Go ahead and hit pause while I actually free up some real estate up here and figure it out. I'll hit pause, in fact. All right, should we see how you did? Okay. Your first two terms, you can factor out an a. And that gives you a b plus 5, right? Your last two terms, what I always say is, if you see something negative in that third term, factor something negative out. So I'll factor a negative 1. And I'm going to get a b plus 5. I get a lot of people that get a b minus 5. They say, oh yeah, I factor out negative, but then they forget to factor that negative right there. Okay, two things that will help you spot that. First of all, what you have in parentheses here and here, they've got to be the same. If this is b minus 5 and that's a b plus 5, where you screwed up was factoring out that negative. Second of all, if you go backwards, right, to check and see if you did it right, negative 1 times b is a negative b. Negative 1 times a positive 5 is a negative 5. If you left that as a negative 5 and you would try to check going backwards, that would have been a plus 5. So that's a good way to check. All right. Now down to two terms. We both have a b plus 5 in common. So that's my greatest common factor, b plus 5. And the other guy is a minus 1. And that is the answer. How'd you do?